Hello and welcome to another episode of the Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Demczak. Thank you so much for listening today. And I'm super excited about our guest today, someone that I've read his work for a long time. I've watched his content that he puts out, and he's all around just a great guy. And so today's guest is Stein Jr., and he's the author of Raise Your Game. He's a podcaster. He's a coach. He's worked with some of the most elite basketball players in the history of basketball. And so, Alan, welcome to the show today. Thanks for taking some time out of your hectic schedule. How are things going in your world lately?
Oh, well, it's absolutely my pleasure. It's great to connect with you. I appreciate your support and your warm welcome. Things in my life are going great. Certainly as a paid professional keynote speaker, my business has changed drastically over the past 6 to 7 months. But ultimately, myself, my children are healthy. I found some ways to make some pivots and still be of service to others. So I'm doing the best I can just to keep on keeping on and trying to do my best to help others do the exact same thing. Because I know some folks listening to this may be struggling a little bit and certainly want to do everything I can to be of service to them.
I love that. And today's topic, the title of today's episode, I think is so important for a lot of us, myself included, to hear and to apply. And the topic that we're going to talk about today is really getting back to the basics. And I've followed your content for a long time, and I think you do such a great job of conveying that message. But just to kind of, I guess, bring up the topic, maybe people tuning into this episode are like, oh, do we have to talk about the basics, right? I just want to point out that, the basics in whatever profession that you're in, they're not sexy, right? They're not something that everyone's like, wow, I'm so excited to talk about the basics and whatever you're talking about. But your message, I think, is so important. Why would you argue that getting back to the basics and whatever you do is one of the most important things that you can do?
Well, I'm so excited that you actually picked this as a theme and as a title. I actually make the following disclaimer in every single speaking event that I do, whether it's virtual or in person. And I said it the other day at my first in-person event in the past 6 months and said, I have the humility to know that everything I'm about to share with you, you have heard before. I had the humility to know that everything I'm about to share with you, you already know it intuitively and intellectually. But the question is whether or not you do it, because there's always a difference between what we know and what we do. And what I tell folks when I'm giving my presentation, that I don't want them to sit back, with their proverbial arms crossed saying, I already know all of this. But instead, I want to encourage them and challenge them to lean forward and ask themselves one of the most important questions we can ever ask ourselves. And that is, how well am I actually doing this? Because knowing without doing is completely useless. So while everyone is aware of the basics, everyone knows the basics, knows how important they are, I find that a lot of people end up, falling to the temptation of skipping over them for the reason that you just said. For the most part, the basics aren't sexy. They're not new, they're not fresh. In fact, they can get mundane, they can get monotonous, and they can get boring. But that's where your greatness lies. I'm a big believer that being a high performer in any area is not about advanced techniques. It's about mastery of the basics. And, there's a few thoughts that come to mind. One is, and I know the NFL season just kicked off last night as the time of this recording. And inevitably, you mark my words, during this season, there'll be a team that will lose 2 or 3 games in a row. And during the post-game press conference, the coach will come on and say something to the effect of, on Monday at practice, we're going to get back to the basics, which of course in football is blocking and tackling and throwing and catching. And that always makes me chuckle, not because I think I'm smarter or a better leader than NFL coaches. These guys are brilliant in what they do. But I chuckle because if your solution to the problem is to get back to the basics, then why did you ever leave them in the first place? And when you study really elite coaches, whether it's a Bill Belichick or a Coach K or a Nick Saban or a Greg Popovich, they don't ever get away from the basics. Every single practice, workout, film session, pregame warm-up includes something that is basic and is fundamental. They never get away from it. And that's one of the reasons, not coincidentally, that those 4 programs in particular are always really, really competitive and always good. Even when their talent isn't there, they're able to over-index because they stay with the basics. And the last thought that I have, someone asked me the other day, I'm 44 years old and I have a decent level of fitness. I mean, I'm certainly no world-class athlete, but for a 44-year-old father of three, I stay in pretty good shape. And
You're pretty fit.
said,
you just ran like a long marathon or something, didn't you? I just saw that.
yeah, so I do okay. But someone said, what's one of the keys to being fit? And I said, well, it's never letting yourself be unfit. Don't be on this roller coaster of sometimes you're working hard and fit and sometimes you're not. And I view the same thing, this mindset of, well, don't let yourself get out of shape. And I'm well aware that there's different types of shape. You can be very fit and not necessarily be ready to run a marathon, or you could be really fit and not ready, to power lift. But just generally speaking, if you're always conscious of what you eat and when you work out and sleeping well, then you'll always stay fit. And I think that same approach holds true with the basics. Whatever you're trying to be good at, whether you're an athlete and you're still playing, you're a coach, you're someone in the business world, figure out what your basics are, your fundamentals, and don't ever leave them. Spend a few minutes every day sharpening those swords. And I know from my own personal experience, anytime that I don't think I'm performing at the level that I'm capable of, or anytime I'm not in the flow and things aren't going as well as I think they should, when I take a step back and take a deep breath and internally reflect, I usually can attribute it to I'm starting to skip the basics a little bit. And I have to make sure that I refocus my lens.
I love that, because what you just said about the basics is true for any profession, not just sports, right? And you've worked with some of the best basketball players to ever play. And I just, maybe you can go into a little bit of your background with some of the people you've worked with, but I think this year has been pretty hard for a lot of people. It's different for everyone, but I think it's been tough for all of us in different areas. And one of the first losses that we had, even before COVID, before everything else was going on, at the end of January, Kobe Bryant passed away, and someone that as a kid, from when we were little, you take a piece of paper, you throw it in the garbage can, you say Kobe, right? And that's someone you just always looked up to. And so for a lot of us, it was hard to even, understand how that could even happen, right? But I think it just brought different perspective to a lot of people. You've had the chance to be around Kobe multiple times. Can you just talk about that loss for you personally? And then, a little bit about his work ethic. I know I've heard you talk about him, his work ethic. If you could expand on that, that would be awesome for our listeners.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that's so crazy, just our general relationship with time, that seems like it was 2 or 3 years ago, just because of the way, this global pandemic has kind of messed with our minds and our perception of time. It's hard to believe that was still during this calendar year. And you said it. I mean, that was a tough way to start the year. And then you throw in a global pandemic, and then you throw in a tremendous amount of social unrest. Then you throw in just the division of it being an election year. I mean, this year is incredibly tough. And as you said so insightfully, there are a lot of people struggling. But coming from a performance background, I can see the silver lining. And I know that one of my jobs as a performance coach was to make workouts as adverse and as challenging as possible. Any good coach I've ever worked with always made practice so tough that the game became easy by default. So without sounding too over dramatic, the fact that this is such a tough year, I do believe that if handled appropriately, this could be one of the best years that ever happened to us individually and as a society when we look back with hindsight, because it's going to help us build grit. It's going to help us build resilience. It's going to make sure that we get back to the basics in certain areas of our life. It's going to make sure that we sharpen the sword and develop new skill sets. It's going to make sure that we're innovative and creative to try new things. So while it'll be a little while before I think we can all have that same shared perspective, I do believe that those of us coming out of this pandemic, this is going to be one of the most important years that we've ever lived, regardless of your age or profession. So with that said, I do hope that gives folks some optimism and positivity. Just look at 2020 as arguably the toughest practice you've ever had to go through. And when you do make it through this, things are going to be so much better and you'll be so much stronger on the other side. Now, that was a slight tangent, but as far as Kobe's concerned, that's really where I came up with this entire concept of don't get bored with the basics, because that is verbatim what he said to me back in 2007 when I asked him what was his secret to success. And that's what it was, that he spends a small amount of time every day. And to a Kobe Bryant, 30 to 45 minutes dialed into a specific drill or series of drills is a small amount of time, that he never let himself get bored with the basics. In a game like basketball, obviously, your shooting mechanics, your footwork, your ability to handle the ball, those are the basic building blocks. So anyone listening to this that is not a basketball player, you just need to figure out what are your basics that you want to get good at, and are you willing to make the commitment for 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes a day to pouring into those basics with intentional repetitions, purposeful practice, and a great level of focus and attitude. And if you are, you're building the foundation to which everything else will be built. So I'm not saying that we don't ever matriculate up to more advanced techniques. I'm not saying that if you're an elite player, you don't start working on more advanced moves. I'm saying you don't do that until you have a much more firm mastery of the basics. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see young players make today. They'll watch a game on TV and they'll see LeBron or Kyrie or KD do an incredible move, and they'll run out to their front yard or run out to the gym and they'll try to mimic that, yet they haven't built the base, of the fundamental base that those players have. So in essence, they're skipping steps. And one thing I learned from my good friend Jay Billis, the only way to the top of any ladder is rung by rung. You can't skip steps. Now you can fall to the bottom of a ladder in one misstep, but you can't get to the top unless you touch every step. So if you want to be able to do the move that LeBron just did, then you need to master each of the little building blocks and micro skills that will allow you to do that. And when you try to skip steps, you're cheating yourself, you're cheating the game, and you're cheating the process. And that's just not sustainable. So I know those are two tangents I've gone on now, but to really and truly answer your question, I believe that is what made Kobe so successful. Was he blocked out all distractions. He wasn't concerned with what was flashy or sexy. He almost had an obsession with being great at the basics. And he knew that that was the key to his legacy. He knew that was the key to his greatness on the court. And he knew that was the key to winning at a high level, which I really and truly believe was the most important thing to him outside of his family.
No, thanks for going on those tangents. Those were great tangents to go on. And I heard you also talk previously about Kobe, that you said he was doing, in one of your talks that I watched, he was doing drills that maybe middle schoolers or high schoolers would be doing, like day one stuff. Like I'm not very good at basketball, but just, day one ball handling drills. And I guess something that I think about is at times we think, well, I've gotten to this point in my career, so I've kind of maybe graduated from the basics, right? But I guess you would argue that you really never graduate from the basics.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely. And that it takes humility to be able to acknowledge that, because the temptation's there. And as we've already said, I mean, it's challenging to get yourself to commit to and focus on the basics when you readily acknowledge that they can be monotonous. They can be mundane. They can be a little bit boring. But the nice part is it's kind of the accumulation and the aggregate total of time invested. So if you're willing to spend just 15 minutes a day working on a specific skill set, and you do that almost every day of your life, then, over years, the compound effect is immeasurable. So that's part of the problem is folks think, oh, I have to work on basic footwork drills for 2 hours a day. No, you don't. You have to do them for 10 to 15 to 20 minutes a day consistently. And that's where usually folks, get into a rut. They don't do that part consistently. So a guy like Kobe, who would work out for 3 hours at a clip, maybe only the first 20 to 30 minutes was heavily dedicated towards the basics. Then the rest was dedicated to some other more advanced moves. But the fact that he did it every day, and in his case, usually multiple times a day, is why he was so successful. And, I always try and translate that to other areas of life. And I think, footwork is probably the most universal basic for every sport. It doesn't matter if you're a tennis player, a football player, a basketball player, baseball, volleyball, what have you, even boxing, your footwork is the foundation to which the rest of your game or your sport is built. And to me, the closest I can come to that in every single area of life, whether it's you as a parent, you as an executive, you as an, just a member of your community, is the skill set that you're doing such a brilliant job of right now. And that's active listening. I believe that listening is the footwork, in the real world. And that if any of us would make the time to get better at actively listening, it makes us more impactful and influential as leaders. It makes us more compassionate and empathetic as teammates. It adds to everything we're trying to do. I can't think of a single profession that wouldn't be enhanced with improved listening. And even when folks try to throw me a ringer and say, well, what about a software engineer who basically is introverted and works by themselves all of the time? Well, you still need to listen. You might not be listening to another human being speak, but you have to listen to the data. You have to listen to your customers. You have to listen to your teammates, or if you're part of a company. If you're creating software that someone else needs to sell, then you better be listening to the sales professionals, because they're probably talking to the customers as far as what problems do they need solved. So yes, you might not need to necessarily listen to someone physically speak the way you are listening to me right now, but you better be listening to a variety of different things. So I can say with great confidence that listening is a basic that every single person on the planet, athletes and coaches included, should work on every single day.
That's super applicable. I love that. And I think you really hit on it when you said, 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day, working on your craft, whatever that basic is for you. I think about a stat, we've probably heard since high school that says, the math teacher tells you, hey, if you put away $1 a day from the time you're 20 years old, at 65, you'll have $1 million in the bank. And you're thinking, wow, that seems really easy. But statistically, most people at retirement maybe have $50,000 in the retirement fund. And so not to nothing wrong with that if that's what they want to do. But I guess hearing you say that, it's like, well, it's true. You have to hear it, but then you also have to then apply that, right? And it's that taking that 20 minutes a day where I'm not going to let myself get out of shape, right? I'm just going to maintain that and find ways to get better. And so something that a concept that you've talked about is the idea of performance gaps. And I really enjoyed hearing you talk about that, because I think it's so true that we sometimes can recognize it, but then we don't apply it. So can you break down what would you say a performance gap is, and then how do we close that gap?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you went in this direction. That's a really insightful way to go. Well, a performance gap is simply the gap between what we know we're supposed to do and what we actually do. So in your example, it's the gap between knowing we should put $1 or $2 away every day and then not doing it. That's where that gap lies. So it's never from lack of knowledge. In 2020, with so many resources at our fingertips, especially from a technology standpoint, lack of knowledge is very rarely the reason we ever get stuck or we get disappointed or anything. The main reason is from lack of doing. It's not from lack of knowing, it's from lack of doing. In fact, I can't think of anything that you and I could not find the answer to within a few minutes of doing some online research. So lack of knowing isn't the problem. Lack of doing is where we all get stuck. We all get frustrated. We all get disappointed. So we have to close that gap. And the reason that gap exists is because there is a difference between basic and easy. It is a very basic principle to put $1 away every single day, but that's not always easy to do. And as human beings, we crave comfort. We default towards comfort. So we will naturally default towards things that are easier for us to do. At this point in my life, working out for 15 to 20 minutes a day, doing something physically active, that is a basic concept. I don't think there's anyone that I'm losing conceptually when I say, hey, you should move your body for 15 to 20 minutes a day. But I also know that that's not easy for everyone to do. That happens to be something that's easier for me to do because I've built that muscle and I've grooved that pattern over the time, over the course of my life. But there are other areas in my life where I do have performance gaps, where things that you may find incredibly easy to do are challenging to me because I haven't built those muscles yet. So what's important is that folks have the humility to acknowledge that the basics that we need to do to close every single performance gap are just that. They're very basic principles, but they're not easy to do. And I think sometimes we take for granted how easy they are. And then when we find that they're a little bit challenging, we quit or we give up. We take that for granted. So we need to go into something like putting $1 away every day from 20 to 65. That's not easy to do. And we need to acknowledge that. And we need to lean into that and say, I'm going to try and do something that is really challenging. I'm going to be so super consistent with putting this money away, but it's not easy. And that is important for us to acknowledge, because then you can also have some shame and some guilt if you feel like, well, it should be easy to do, because it's not. And when I bring these things up, I don't say that to call anyone out. You know, if anyone listening to this hasn't been physically active in months, you've really been down in the dumps because of this pandemic, I don't say that to make you feel worse. I say that so that you know tomorrow you are more than free to wake up and change your decision. You're more than welcome to wake up and make tomorrow the first brick that you're going to lay on your new wall. And then you just need to do that the day after that and the day after that, and ultimately start to get some consistency. So with that, I don't ever want someone to get stifled by perfection. What I want is for folks to be motivated and inspired by progress. Progress is more important than perfection. In fact, where you are right now at this moment is not near as important as the direction at which you're going. You know, I would hope that no one listening to this right now is 100% satisfied with their entire life and where they are. I mean, I'm an incredibly happy and fulfilled guy. I'm not satisfied. You know, I want to be a little bit better tomorrow than I am today. So as long as my arrow is pointing up, and I know that every day I'm at least making the attempt to get a little bit better in certain areas of my life, that's what's most important. And there'll be days where, you know, I'm feeling, you know, I'm not feeling as motivated, or there'll be days where I have a lapse in judgment and I make a poor decision. So once again, my arrow is not going to go in a straight line up. It's going to have some bumps and some curves to it. But as long as, generally speaking, it is progressively heightening, then I know I'm on the right track. And to me, that is by far what's most important.
That is great. And when you talk about leadership, you know, whether, you know, sometimes when I speak at places, I was at a high school recently and I said, hey, raise your hand if you're a leader, you know, and a few football players raised their hand. And then towards the end, after my talk, just going through like, hey, if you have a platform, you are a leader, you know, then ask them at the end, hey, who's a leader in this room? And then seeing almost all the hands go up, it was pretty cool to watch. And when you talk about leadership, I subscribe to your email newsletter that you send out, and you just recently sent out three of the top abilities that you think leaders should possess. What are those abilities that they should possess, and why do you think that?
Well, if you can do me a huge favor, if you can just tee them up and lob them to me one by one, because even though I wrote that post a little while ago, I don't have it committed to memory. I have a feeling I know what it is, but I also know there was like 6 or 7 abilities, and I narrowed it down to those 3.
Yeah.
I love to teach in 3s. And this is a good lesson for anyone. I've actually found, and I do believe there's some research to back it up, that when you teach things in 3s, they become stickier. And ultimately, as a speaker like you are, as a coach, as a parent, even as a teammate, we always want to make sure that the things we're sharing are as sticky as possible. Because if the things I share during one of my keynotes or during this podcast, if they're not sticky, that means people won't remember them, and they certainly won't do them. So anything more than 3 is going to start to get kind of lost in the ether, and it's a little bit information overload. So you tee them up to me one by one, and I got you, brother.
No, I love that. So I subscribe to your email newsletter. I love reading it. And you said, you said that there was 3 things that leaders, they should possess, three traits and abilities. And here's what they are. Number 1, you said accountability. Number 2, dependability. And number 3, coachability. Why did you think that those were the 3 most important things a leader can possess?
Well, many people look at accountability as a negative thing, very similar to the way they look at discipline. Every single word in the English language has an emotional connotation, and that's, how does the word make you feel? Beyond the standard definition, how does it make you feel? I know that a lot of younger people, they think of the word discipline as being negative because they equate it to punishment. And they view punishment as a consequence of being bad or doing something wrong. See, I have the exact opposite connotation with discipline. I actually believe discipline is the key to freedom. I think discipline is the key to anything you want in life. That if you want to be happy, fulfilled, successful, significant, respected, a high performer, a high achiever, then you have to learn how to be disciplined. I had a coach tell me when I was really young, and I don't think this was an original by him. I think this is an older quote, but he said, Alan, if you're willing to discipline yourself, then others won't have to. And that just made a lot of sense to me. You know, if I'm willing to do what I'm supposed to do in the classroom, teachers won't have to discipline me. If I do what I'm supposed to do in the weight room or on the court, my coach won't have to discipline me. So I look at self-discipline as a gift. And that's exactly how I look at accountability. Accountability is taking responsibility for your behavior and your actions. Holding someone accountable is one of the best gifts you can give them, because holding someone accountable is something you do for them. It's not something you do to them. There's a big difference. So I want a leader to be accountable and hold themselves accountable to what they say they're going to do. I want them to walk the walk. I also want them to be open to others holding them accountable. So when there's a day that the leader's not as good as they should be, or doesn't show up as their best self, or makes a mistake, which of course will happen because leaders are human and fallible, then I want them to be open to receiving that feedback. So yes, leaders absolutely have to be accountable. I also want them to be dependable, for the dependability. Can I count on you? Can I count on you to hold yourself accountable to doing what you say that you are going to do? I mean, that's vital. Dependability is one of the most important traits, not only for leaders, but of teammates. Do you have my back? Can I depend on you to do the things that you say you're going to do and do the things that I need you to do? And as any leader will tell you, it's completely up to them to model the behavior that they want to see in everyone else. A leader depends on his or her people doing what's right. Well, the only way that's going to happen is if they do the same thing and they lead that by example. So that was accountability and dependability. And remind me of the last one right now.
Third one was coachability.
Coachability. Good. How could I forget that one? That not only for leaders, but I think is one of the most important traits we as human beings should possess. And coachable means you have the humility to acknowledge that you can still get better, and you have the humility to acknowledge that you don't know it all and you don't have all the answers. And first and foremost, I believe that humility is one of the most attractive traits we can possess as humans. I think as a leader, everybody knows that you're in charge. Everybody knows that you have authority. So you don't need to try to prove that every day. If you can actually have humility when you don't know the answer, or you do need some help, or you can apologize when you do or say or do something that maybe was a lapse in judgment, I think that's an incredibly attractive trait. So starting with humility, it's really, really important. But then being coachable, every high performer I've ever met in sport or in business has a coach or has a series of coaches that are an expert in the thing that they're trying to improve. A good coach can help you see your blind spots. They tell you the things that you need to hear, not just the things that you want to hear. So being coachable basically sends the message to your team that I'm not done growing. I'm not done learning. I have not hit my ceiling of what I'm capable of. And which, of course, now you're modeling that for your team. So being coachable also means being very open to feedback. You want folks to offer praise and tell you when you do things well so that you can do more of that. But you also want to be open, excuse me, to some constructive comments when you're not doing so well so that you can make some changes. So yeah, those three abilities are vital. And what you did such a great job of teeing up, I want everyone to look at themselves as a leader. You might be the last man at the end of the bench on a basketball team, or you might be the lowest rung on a company's org chart, but you still can make the choice to lead. Now, you may not be given very much authority. You may not be given a pristine title, but you can still make the choice to lead, which is simply a decision to help others raise their game and improve their performance by being a positive influence in their life. That's all leadership is. It's the decision to influence others positively. And I want everyone to make that decision, because being a leader is one of the most important skill sets that you can ever develop, which is why I love sports so much, because I believe sports can be a tremendous platform to help teach and reinforce leadership skills that athletes then can use in other areas of their life.
I love that. And I love how you said, every high performer that you've been around in business or in sports, they have a coach, they have someone, because I think a lot of times we think we've arrived. And so it's like, well, why am I going to listen to this person? But just, but then we can learn so many different things from other people just by being vulnerable and having humility, like you said. And a verse that comes to mind, it's in Proverbs 15:22. It says, without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. And I think that's so true. I was kind of convicted in hearing you say that, and just having that verse kind of come to mind is, do I have counsel? Do I have wise counsel in different areas of my life, whether that's fitness or if it's accountability with different things, for business, for speaking, and what would you say, how important is it for us to, and how do we even go about that, to find people in our lives that could be kind of coaches for us to take us to the next level?
Love you went in this direction. Well, there's two things that come to mind. One, I'll speak from personal experience. 4 years ago, when I made the very purposeful pivot to go from being a basketball performance coach to being a corporate keynote speaker and author, the very first thing I did was hire a speaking coach to help me improve the craft of speaking. When I decided to write Raise Your Game, the very first thing I did was hire a co-author, which in this case served as kind of a writing coach, because I hired someone that's been writing books for almost 30 years. So while I was the content and the idea and the stories behind everything in Raise Your Game, he was the one that helped provide some structure and to put them into different categories and to stay organized and to help me with my research. So in essence, he was a writing coach, even though he was very much my co-author and my teammate. It is funny that you brought up putting $1 away every day since 20, because prior to 2 years ago, when I made the decision to hire a financial coach, a wealth advisor, if you will, my biggest performance gaps were in my financial life. I've known since I was 20 that I should be putting money away, very diligently. And I hadn't done a very good job of that. Being in my early 40s, I wasn't where I felt I should have been financially. And I had no one to blame but myself, because I didn't always make great financial decisions. And I decided to hire a coach, a financial advisor that was going to hold me accountable. The funny part was, everything that he told me to do, I already knew I was supposed to do. He did not tell me anything new. But what he did say was, Alan, here are the 3 things that I need you to do this month. And we're going to go ahead and schedule a call right now at the end of the month so you can give me an update on those 3 things. That's so awesome. He held me accountable to doing them. And I have radically transformed my financial life in the last 2 years, doing things that I already knew that I was supposed to do. So, I have several different coaches in my life at present to help me get good in these very specific areas. If I'm not a good enough example for your listeners, I totally understand. So I'll take it a step higher. Let's look at Tom Brady. Let's look at someone who is arguably the greatest player ever at his specific position. And he's chosen to basically start his career over with a new franchise. And I know firsthand that Tom Brady has a series of coaches. Obviously, he has the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And within that system, he'll have a quarterback's coach. There's 2, but I know that he has a personal fitness coach. I know that he has a nutrition coach. I know that he has a psychological mental training coach. And I would imagine that he has some others. So a guy like Tom Brady, who also in his 40s is still at the peak of his career, has, 5, 6, 7 different coaches in his life that allow him to do that. And if anyone could put on the cruise control and say, hey, I got it, it's Tom Brady, one of the winningest athletes in the history of all team sports. But he doesn't. He realizes that the key to him being able to sustain his game is to continue to be open to coaching.
Sustain his game and raise his game, like your book. There you go. There's a little plug for you.
Love it.
No, that's super insightful. And I think I need to make some calls and get a few more coaches lined up in my own life after hearing you say that. That's really, that's awesome. And so I want to end with this. I ask every guest this on the podcast, the same question. And I think it kind of gives us a little insight into your life. So the last question I want to ask you is this. It's kind of personal, but it's this. At the end of your life, so whenever that is for you, at the end of your life someday, what do you want people to say at your funeral about Alan Stein Jr.?
I love that. Well, since I'm the king of tangents, let me interject something before, and then I will specifically answer your question. Because of my relationship with time, I realize that time is not promised. So I don't know when that funeral is going to occur. I don't have any reason to believe that it'll be next week or even this year, but it could. So first and foremost, I do try to live a life in accordance with the fact that I don't know when this show is going to be over. Furthermore, what I do is I have this loose vision of the man that I want to be 20 years from right now. So who do I want the 64-year-old Alan to be? Even though I've already acknowledged that there's no promise that I'll get there, I do have a loose vision of who I want the 64-year-old Alan to be. And without getting too granular, I want the 64-year-old Alan to be someone that has a very deep relationship with his children, his closest family and friends. I want the 64-year-old Alan to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. I want the 64-year-old Alan at that time to be doing what he considers meaningful work in service of other people. So that's the vision I have of who that I want to become. And right now, at present day and in present age, I aim to make every decision in my life, both large and small, in alignment with becoming that guy. From what I watch on Netflix to what I choose to eat for lunch, I want it to be in alignment with becoming that guy. And the reason I say that is if the vast majority of decisions that I make on a daily basis are in alignment with becoming that guy, then I am designing my own future. I will be a emotionally fit and physically fit 64-year-old doing work in service of others and having a great relationship with his kids. I have no doubt, because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm planting those seeds. So ultimately, to answer your question, that's kind of what I would hope my legacy will be. I'm aware that one of the biggest parts of my legacy will be my own children. And do I raise 3 children that grow up to be high character, contributors to this world, people that are kind and thoughtful and inclusive? I think my children will be, kind of an offshoot of how I raised them. But ultimately at my funeral, if someone can say, Alan lived a life that was in accordance with his values. Alan did what he could to serve other people and to be of service to others. Alan really took pride in being as fit as he could be in every area of his life. I think if anything close to those types of sentiments are shared at my funeral, then I'll feel like my time here on earth was decent.
Well, I think you're doing a lot of those things already. So that's really inspiring. Thank you for sharing. And I'm also going to link to your book in our show notes so people can connect with you and your social media and things like that. You're doing some really awesome work and making a huge difference. So thank you so much. We're going to be rooting for you. Everyone's going to check out your book that's listening, I'm sure, and keep following you on social media and things. But thank you so much. And man, you just keep making a difference. And I think, at your funeral, you'll be able to say all those things. We will be able to say that in confidence about you because you're already living those things in your life. So thank you for making a difference in that way.
Sounds good. Totally my pleasure. Well, you've got an invite to my funeral. So at the very least, if you're there, you can say these things about me. So it was almost as if I was prophetic. It might be a little awkward when you stand up at the end and just say, you're reading off of your show notes and just say, I just want you all to know that Alan lived a life in alignment with his values. He was also emotionally fit, and so. But at least you got my back, so that'd be perfect.
All your family would be like, "Who is this guy?"
Yeah, who is this guy? Alan was on his podcast, 37 years ago. That's kind of weird.
No, I appreciate that, man. Well, thanks so much. Keep making a difference, and thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alex.